So, a very warm welcome to this session. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever your sun is. A very warm welcome to all of you. Together, we are now into a session which is very important session, focusing on diversity and inclusion in corporates. So often we wonder that, why is it that diversity and inclusion agendas are taken so importantly and given so much of emphasis in the corporate world? There's several, crucial factors that contribute to the success and the sustainability of the corporates itself for a variety of reasons. This could be diversity in terms of mindset, which lead to innovation because diverse workforce brings about individuals with diverse experiences, backgrounds, and even sometimes perspectives. And therefore, whenever unique solutions are needed to any kind of a problem, the solution pathways may be very, very different from each other, but that gives rise to new products, new services, and new approaches. Also, because of these varying perspectives, etc., there are always, some better decision making that may happen. Market research also kind of, shows us that both global as well as diverse markets, the workforce actually reflects diversity in your customer base and therefore can help your company to understand and to cater to the needs and preferences of several different demographics. Of course, yes, DNI agents also help in employee engagement, keeping the workforce rooted for a very long time, enhancing their satisfaction with everyday work, and engaged, satisfied, and committed workers is all that everybody is always looking for, because that is where increased productivity, team belongingness, all kind of comes through. Additionally, it helps to reduce bias, it helps to reduce marginalization, it helps to reduce any kind of a discrimination. Also, there are legal and ethical considerations and benefits because of varied kind of workplaces, and of course, yes, the brand image and reputation of companies basically depends on the diversity and inclusion agendas that they have. These often build strong reputations in the eyes of consumers, investors, and also stakeholders. So, having kind of said that, I think I've set the stage to a sufficient level to be able to hand it over to our anchor for the day, Praful Baweja. Praful, over to you. It would be great if you could kind of introduce yourself and your organization before we get started with the two very, very eminent and familiar faces who are our panelists, Anupama, Easwaran, and Vieshaka Dutta. Over to you, Praful.
Thank you, Simi. Thank you for introducing the subject. Thank you for giving us this platform, and excited to host this for today. I have a DI consultancy called 6 Degrees Diversity Council, and we look at uh, various aspects, right, from employer branding to advisory on how an ERG has to function, to employee engagement, to a bunch of other things, right from recruitment to retention, the whole life cycle. And we realized that there is no such thing as exclusive inclusion pretty early in the day when we were a networking forum, right? And a lot of peer group, a lot of people who helped us form that vision, that understanding. Uh, Out of that, Vieshaka and Anupama, both of them have played key role in their own capacities. Vieshaka has led the DI charter for an organization that has been creating, benchmarks and milestones for a lot of corporate to follow. Um, Templatization is not something that is easy, and Vieshaka has made a lot of them. Um, so Vieshaka heads DI Charter at Publicis Sapient. She's with us. Hi, Vieshaka. How are you?
Hello, I'm really happy to be here.
Looking forward to our conversation. Anupama is somebody who has changed allyship game for a lot of us to see it go from one to another phase is something that's inspiring because year after year, she has raised the bar for allyship for trans folks in some way or the other, and her organization inharmony does a great amount of work. Trans employment mela is just one of the projects that they have executed early last year, and they have a landscape view with that, of course, of the kind of issues and the kind of struggles that trans folks face while headhunting, while skilling, while a lot of things that comes to absorption in workforce. Anupama, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Praful, so much, and thank you, Simi, and everyone. Vieshaka, hi.
Hello.
So, would you all like to quickly tell us something more? So, Vieshaka, beginning with you, about Publicis Sapient and the role, etc., so that people have a perspective of how this conversation is going to go through that lived experience and that kind of lens.
So thank you. Really happy to be here. Hello to all the audiences. Publicis Sapient is a digital transformation leader in the consulting space. We are spec across the globe. Really happy to represent the organization where I see so much of championship, curiosity, effort, and initiative to truly look at DEI as who we are and not something that we do. I head the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Charter for India and Asia Pacific, and I'm also a part of the Global DEI leadership team. I feel that this is a place where our purpose is to help people thrive in the brave pursuit of the next. And to help people thrive, you have to create that environment first. And we are truly on the road on that journey, and we feel the purpose. And I really feel very proud to be here.
Thank you. Thank you on that. Anupama, can we bring you in? And would you like to share what you all are currently up to? How do you all see this space? And how's inharmony doing?
Thanks, Praful. And so I lead a diversity and inclusion consultancy called inharmony. We are like almost 10 years old. We'll complete 10 years next year. Strange, but yes. And I like the term Praful used, exclusive inclusion. I think we also very early on realized I started inharmony focused on how to bring in more women representation in the workplace, but soon realized that unless we create an inclusive environment for everybody, there is nothing called one particular sector that you can bring into the workplace. Like, you need everybody to thrive and to feel a sense of belonging. So it's the entire environment that needs to be looked at holistically. So that's been our focus for a long time. And like Praful said, I am a very strong transgender ally. I work a lot with the community. My journey with the community started in 2016. And yes, one of the biggest things that we have done is the trans employment mela for earlier this year, actually in March. And so also to tell you that that's the first time I've got into the employment space itself. And I've done that specifically for the trans community because I realized that giving economic empowerment makes a big difference if we want to really make that shift for the community. And yeah, that's one space that we have entered into, but we are constantly ready to see what more can we do to not just look at workplaces, but society itself more inclusive. And I'm delighted and and thank you to all of you for having me here in this panel discussion. And it's wonderful. Looking forward to this interaction.
Brilliant. So let's begin. Our conversational focus is around few key topics. One of them is intersectionality, and you've kind of mentioned it, Anupama, in your conversation. But intersectionality largely is something that has been heard of and echoed in feminist spaces, right? Largely. The true depth and meaning and navigation of it across the spectrum, because so many identities that everybody carries. And it's not just gender oriented, right? It is across. So which one comes first, which one comes next, is something that will constantly keep shifting, it will keep changing, it will keep evolving. For organizations to factor that in, how do we take efforts to promote DI, keeping overall the multiple identities and intersectionality in mind? And how can you truly represent and how can you truly embrace a person, keeping the intersectional aspects in mind, that everybody is more than single dimension of their being? um, Vishaka?
Yeah, I'll start with your last sentence. Every person is more than a single dimension piece of being. And, the more we say it to ourselves, the more we believe it, I think we'll be more mindful of it. Is there a challenge in accepting intersectionality at a cerebral or a intellectual level? No, right? It seems very intuitive, common sense. The challenge comes when we start feeling maybe the pressure of what do we have to do here, right? And there, a lot of people at workplaces and society might feel an exhaustion before they've really acted on anything. On, okay, I need to understand this, now I have to figure out this, I have to be careful about what I have to say, because this could be this, a certain identity and the other, etc., etc. If we just remember that every one of us will have intersectionality, right, and we live it every day, and we've done it forever as human beings, I think then this whole pressure will come off, and it will become easier. And when I speak to people in our organization, and I see them struggling with it, if at all, the only thing is to again use common sense and do one thing at a time, right? So you work on understanding a lived experience, you believe it, you accept it, you process it, and then you go on to the rest, and that's okay. But being on the journey is important, being consistently curious, telling yourself that if I truly want to be inclusive, which I believe, and I truly believe everyone wants to think they are good people, they are inclusive, they are not biased, they're not discriminatory, they're not hurting people intentionally or unintentionally. But if we really truly want to be that person in action too, then we will just have to keep one step after the other on understanding, finding our curiosity, finding our courage, finding our energy and effort to understand more. And that will make it all come together. And as long as we realize it, believe it in our minds, the rest of it is easy.
Thank you. The only point that I will bring in here is biases are cognitive, a lot of them. And if anybody has a brain, any decision making that is done under certain factors, etc., it will have a bias. And bias, being a four-letter word, does not have that connotation. So perpetually biased, yes, people won't be, but decisions can be biased, which bring barriers. So questioning those decisions is something that I ask most of the corporate to be mindful of. That, hey, you might not be a biased person, but the decision can be biased. Data can be biased. Sort of research framework can be biased. These are the areas where mindfulness comes a lot of times, and it helps to see that, hey, are we looking at things through few lenses? Can we reduce a few filters? Can we add a few filters for clarity to emerge? Now, both of those are, addition or subtraction are subjective according to where what plays. Anupama, you've seen a lot of things from consultancy side when the space was really emerging, when DI was getting binary, its basic terminology in place, and at that point of time and until today. According to you, again, intersectionality overall within an organization, and even social sector and everywhere, the idea of it is one piece, implementation of it is another. So where do you see it? How do you suggest people make sense of it and then navigate through it?
Yeah. So I think, like Vishaka said, it's actually quite common sense that intersectionality exists. Like I'm here as I identify as a woman, heterosexual woman, but there are so many other layers of me that I am presenting right here as I'm speaking, right? And that's a reality which we all should be aware of. But unfortunately, that common sense is often not there when we talk about diversity, inclusion, and intersectionality. So when we have conversations with corporates, also largely when they say, "I want to hire women, I want to hire PWD," it's all like in silos. But PWD can be a woman, can be from the LGBTQ community, can have so many other layers, can have a different race, ethnicity, so many other things. So I feel these conversations are actually not much evolved as yet. And one of the key things is to start this conversation at the senior most level, because that's where, when the leadership starts understanding and believing it, then you're able to take it down further in the organization. Somewhere down the level, maybe there are people. There is also, I think, one of the good things is that companies are having diversity and inclusion councils now, and they are also bringing in people from business. It's earlier it used to be HR, and HR was driving this agenda. Now you have people from various businesses who are involved, and I believe they bring in those intersectionalities organically, and that in some way is driving the whole agenda for many organizations. But definitely you need a strong sponsor from the leadership for this conversation to evolve.
Sure. Like I put multiple hats, right? Like many of us, we are coders, we are project managers. A lot of people here are mothers. A lot of people are caregivers in some way or the other. I have parents that I care for. Everybody has a lot of and multiple things running at the same time, right? Now that's not looked upon as intersectionality technically, while it is, right? Um, so I wanted to bring in
Yes.
one example so that to people who are viewing and people who are following this conversation, they see this with clarity. And then I'll ask you all, for example, like Bank of America had a program called Keep the Change. And Keep the Change was one of the pivotal programs for Bank of America to champion usage of debit cards and paying exact amounts. This is early in 2000s, right? So if you have to not pay $8 and pay $7 X cents, a debit card would help you save that amount, right? And keep that change. While they would promote it on checks and other things, but debit card was like, of course, when you swipe it, it'll be exactly that much. So that helped them push it, and it saved billions for their customers. It helped them look upon as somebody who thought about their customers, etc. But it started with thinking of single mothers who need to penny pinch and who need to save, and for whom X number of dollars at end of every week and paycheck to paycheck made that difference, and they would really appreciate somebody helping them do that. Right? Started from there and reached mainstream and made billions of bucks for a lot of people. So a lot of programs that are made, and they even have a single layer of intersectionality, because single mothers itself is a spectrum. It'll have so many different kinds of families covered in whatever manner, and families will also get impacted by the same program. That is another story. But that one single dimension of intersectionality that came beyond the gender, that got so much of return. Do y'all have any example either in HR space or in any business space, etc., where intersectionality really played its role and there was a turnaround or there was some kind of result at the end of it? Vishaka, even if it's in your own firm, even if somewhere else that you can think of, please share.
uh, you know what, I would add to what you said. It's not that a lot of programs have multifold benefits. Every program, when you think about a certain beneficiary, that's my experience of DEI in over 15 plus years, right? Every program has always gone beyond to help different people who were not the initial target in mind for a person, right? I'll give you one example. I have multiple examples, and I have to share this, right? So, yeah, in Publicis Sapient, when we have our internal programs, our introductions are done like this. So, I would say I'm Vieshaka Dutta. I lead DNI for India and APAC. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm wearing an orange and white t-shirt, right? And a lot of people who may be curious about why we are talking about the pronouns, there's so much you can read up upon it. If you're thinking why are we even describing our clothes, is because if there is a person with visual impairment or low vision, they will have access, to this visual that the others have, like nobody else, right? One of my first initial uh, DNI programs in a different company was when I became a new mother, right? And I was also pursuing a lot of counseling and mental health academically. It helped me immensely as a mother to get over my dilemmas of mother's guilt. How do I balance? I really wanted to be a hands-on mother. I loved my child, and I wanted to be there for those moments. Like potty training and others. And I think my son will kill me for saying all of this, but I really wanted to do it, right? And when it helped me so much, all the mental health information that I had, the training that I got, we did some experiments in that organization for to bring in workshops. We piloted workshops for we said parenting workshops, but our target was women. Women whose children were very young mothers. I had piloted for 3 events, 30 participants each. And we would not get like a lot of participants, that we had to really book seats, etc. This was the first program. All the 3 programs that we had piloted for, we had 150 plus people come in, more men than women, right? And sometimes I would see the same people in 2 different sessions. It to me was the dawn of what was my blind spot, right? We heard from men how they had challenges of how they could use information on how being a better hands-on parent, of traditional roles that they have seen where they wanted to break the bias and more. um, 10 years down at Publicis Sapient, we did a lot of awareness, exposure, experience awareness program before we actually started intentionally hiring people from the LGBTQ community, right? And when we started hiring people, and we really had a lot of people, thankfully, who wanted to join us and take the opportunity. And, now we were ready with champions and allies who wanted to do more because of all the training and sensitization and experience they had gone with. Um, we saw we were hiring a lot more gay men than queer women. And had we not had that lens of gender, even in the LGBTQI space, we would have missed it. And then we saw that even within that, the trans and the gender non-binary community was minuscule, right? So bringing in equity from equality, we launched a program only for trans people as an internship, because that's where we realized how there could be a skill gap, etc., etc. Even when we hire trans interns, right, from our superb partners, Tweet Foundation and Periphery, we realized, like this year when I was looking through the list of people who were going through, we had more trans men than women. And we intentionally then started looking at queer women. This is not just DEI intentionality. This is not just DEI gyan. This is very important, because the people who came in with that intention, they speak differently, they bring in a lot of value that if we had overlooked would have not been with the organization. So I truly recommend people to also experiment, because you may not have a lot of precedence, like these stories of keep the change and all of this. A lot of people will not know, but find this curiosity, find the effort to experiment and learn. And I'm truly happy because today the organization benefits from it, right? Our internship project was an experiment last year. This year we said, okay, and it was fully funded. This year we went to business. And Anupama, you were talking about how organizations now have DEI council where you have business folks. Our DEI council is mostly business folks. And in different business units, we have a DEI council for that. Right? That's when we've seen the agenda moving. And that was not a suggestion that came from the DEI team. They realized that within their, every organization has huge business teams. How do you mobilize such a large machinery? You create champions of your own. Right? And then it was those champions who came back asking for people from diverse groups in their businesses. And that experience has now, I have people saying, okay, next year I want, a larger number and more. And we're also monitoring how the experience has been. It should not become a number game. Very important. So we are checking on experiences for our interns. We do boot camps, etc. beyond the skills they bring in. We do excessive sensitization and check-in with the businesses so that both parties feel that they are benefiting. And if they need the support of experts to go through it, that is provided. Praful, you're on mute.
To the good old pandemic, you're on mute.
Oops.
So, Anupama, coming to you now, because Vieshaka, all the examples, everything that
I think he's going to
you've
rejoin
given,
back.
that helps us. And Anupama, coming to you, since you have seen the whole spectrum and landscape and more than one organization that you're in touch with, and you see a larger perspective from the peripheral side. So when you look at it, are there any best practices across corporate that are emerging that you recommend generally for a person to keep not just one, like doing one at a time is something. Women returning to work is okay, fine. We are targeting gender, and within gender, this is the space that we are targeting. Are you seeing such pockets, such things emerge in intersectionality clearly? Like one example that that I shared.
Yeah. So definitely, if I were to start, my voice is echoing for some reason. Yeah, it's okay now. So one, when you spoke about women returning from maternity, yes. So initially, that was a focus that women return from maternity or from a career break. Today, the same programs are looking at any individual who's had to take a career break for any reason, like it could be for caregiving, because there are it's a gender agnostic role, caregiving. It's no longer seen as that only a woman is required to do that. Praful, you yourself mentioned that you have that responsibility. So anybody who's taken a career break, they are invited to take they are allowed to take part in this kind of second career program. So that's one change which I have noticed. Vieshaka, when you spoke about this whole, the introduction that you do for any of the internal sessions. So we have a client who used to run a parenting ERG. Actually, it was an ERG which was only for mothers. Okay, and it ran only for mothers for a year. And then this year, the same thing was relaunched as a parenting ERG, which was open for everybody. And I think 70%, sorry, not 70, 40% of the participants are men. There are allies also in the group. And besides that, whenever they also have any session, now we are talking about parenting, but we've done many other programs for them as well. Every session starts with the same that, Vieshaka spoke about, introducing yourself with your pronouns, with describing what you're wearing. There is a sign language interpreter for all the sessions. And so these are like, some things which changes that I am seeing taking place. I think, Praful, I've attended some of the programs that conducted by you, also by Publicis Sapient, and I've seen these as like hygiene factors that you ensure that it's always maintained. I think those changes I definitely see. Also, policies of like which started like same-sex partners. I think now we say your domestic partner or your preferred partner. So, if like all the benefits are now accessible, it's not necessary that you need to be like a legally married partner. It's a partner that you have identified as somebody that you want to share the benefit with, and that person can avail of this benefit. So these are some of the very progressive changes that I'm seeing, and also looking at an individual as an adult who knows how to take decisions about their life, and enabling them to take that life, rather than a company dictating that, are this is who your life should be, and this is how you need to take benefit of things.
Absolutely, because these things don't have anything to do with productivity and the kind of results that a person can bring as a fruitful employee. Coming back to Vieshaka, now we heard of the journey and what all y'all are doing as far as programmatic approach is concerned. But when it comes to psychological safety, intersectionality, and going beyond tokenism, going beyond just sticking to dates and tick box mandates, like when people only do few things in Pride months, when people do only wake up for Women's Day in March, when they only want to do people with disability conversation when it's nearing 3rd of December. Now, these are milestones, right? These are checkpoints, as one can call, because this is when spotlight is there on these particular DI domains, right?
Themes.
And these must be like toll nakas, right? These must be like one of those checkpoints where you see, hey, how our journey is going, how far we have reached, and let's take account, let's take a check here. But these are looked upon as opportunities to do these conversations. But if somebody has to speak, like when I speak about me being queer and neurodivergent, a lot of people would like to either bring it down saying that speak only about your ADHD, don't speak about your sexuality at that point of time. When you're talking about ADHD, don't talk about how autism uh, was the spectrum from which ADHD sprang. So people would like to fit things back into a box, though there are multiple layers in them and nuances in them. How do you promote psychological safety? How do you promote an environment of openness so that a person can bring overall their authentic self, all the layers and dimensions, to a corporate space and speak?
It makes me sad that you said that there are people who would ask you to speak about one and not the other. I never thought this would be happening so rampant, but because you're saying this, right? So in our organization, first and foremost, to be consistent in our message is very important for psychological safety. I want to know if you are really for real. We do nothing as a program that doesn't run through the year. Nothing. It's not acceptable, right? But we want to celebrate cultural moments when the whole world is doing this, and we will make it bigger and celebratory and invite people with joy in themes that are running across the world, right? I'll give you an example, and in letter with intention. So there is a decision in our group that works towards women career development and growth, and which is about listening to voices and learning. And every year, I have to tell you, I go back at the end of the year to say, open question, what would you like to tell the leadership as they're closing the year? They challenge us. They give newer insights that the leaders are not expecting. They challenge me as a DI leader to say, do something now in this space, because the expectation is raised. The decision in that group is there will be no program about women where men are not involved. Right? Because what's the point? Right? There will be, if we are doing something on LGBTQI inclusion, it is something we run through the year, not only trainings. It's not about how initially we would invite people from outside to speak and tell us their story. It is, the focus is totally on people inside, not to tell their story, but to teach the organization what we need to learn. With all humility, curiosity, and accountability. Because today people are accountable for their behaviors. What are they doing more since yesterday? Right? And, it is a systematic approach to building an accountability for everyone, starting with the leaders. Right? So once you if you truly accept a person as they are, intersectionality comes with it. The other thing you would see is when we obviously the spotlight is on people who are faces of some of these journeys, right? So there are people who have led what we call internally BRG, the Employee Resource Group in Publicis Sapient, is called Business Resource Group because it's also the business, right? We would have people who worked in the women's space for some time. And since BRG spaces are also about your leadership journey, they would have gone to lead the LGBTQS space. And when they've done some good amount of work there, we are like, okay, challenge yourself, work in the disability space. And you are truly an advocate when you're speaking about it, not just learning, not just supporting, not just a worker, but speaking about it internally and externally, for which you will have to do some work. Like all of us have to do that work. And once you see people do these rotations and in spaces that they're not comfortable about, which they don't know about, that's when acceptance, realization comes in. I think that brings in the psychological safety that you're not addressing one part of a person versus the other. Right? Like our Mother's Day campaign work is actually a collaboration between caregivers BRG and the women BRG. Right? We recently did Family Days, which was a celebration, the fact that for some of these very recent years, caregiving was such a huge part of each one of our human life. You could have been with your parents or a person that you needed to take care of, but you could have done it virtually also. Pet parenting. And if we are to sustain our business, we have to acknowledge the value that they have brought. And the Family Day programs we did more recently was a collaboration between businesses and the caregivers BRG, not only a DI effort. And that's when they came together, right? Like that's when people feel they're a part of it. So like I said, it cannot be like one without the other. That's just incomplete.
Thanks for that. I agree completely that for anybody who's taking further steps and going into deeper dive in the DI journey, it is about accountability. It's not about fitting into a certain mold and doing things in a certain manner, because belonging is exactly the opposite of fitting in. So once you belong, you will like others also to belong, and not to fit in, because fitting in is fixing, right, in a certain manner.
Yeah.
So that contrast is visible from your journey. Anupama, coming to you now, you know so many lived experiences because you interact from the candidate pool, from the people who are being skilled, who are being sheltered, who are being trained at every given point of time. From that perspective and looking at corporate, what is it that you see on corporate side, the steps that they should take to prep to get the talent pool and to absorb them, and for the real representation to be included? Not only, aspirationally people can say, I would like X kind of diversity, I would like to have X number of roles and X kind of journey, XYZ, but feasibly actually to deliver, because not everybody has their theory and practice in sync. There is lacuna, and we can ease that journey by telling them that, hey, these are few steps, these are few things that if you consider, it'll help you bridge that gap and close, and move ahead better in the DI space.
Yeah. So, normally what we advise companies, firstly, even do a kind of a dipstick to understand where you are currently as far as the appetite for, bringing in more kind of diversity in the organization, even appreciating the diversity which is currently there in your company. Are people feeling valued? What is their sense of belongingness in the organization? So your existing employees itself, because you don't need to go hunt for diversity, because typically we are talking of intersectionality. All of us bring in that into the workplace. Um, from there, based on whatever that we find, we also advise that start with the senior leadership. They need to understand completely, like what is it that they want to do, and to own that agenda as well. If you have a council, then that group needs to go through this. And we advise also on unconscious bias training, which actually looks at this whole intersectionality part. And then cascaded down further in terms of sensitization programs, etc. Now, specifically, if you're talking about minority represented groups like a transgender community or even LGBTQ, or people with disability, there are special sensitization programs that are conducted, because this is also it is a community which many of us may not understand a lot about the community. So it's very important that we bring in trainers who are from the community, so their lived experiences make a big difference, actually, in understanding what is their pain point, what is it that they want, right? And only then because otherwise I may have a lens which is based on, maybe I've seen some Bollywood movies and I'm thinking, Acha, this is how this community is and this is what I need to do. But that is absolutely not right. So let's hear from the community, let's bring them into it, into the programs and the initiatives. What I have noticed is that there are some companies who do, some companies are trying to find a shortcut, and that bothers me a lot, because shortcut means that this will not last. Then they come back saying it didn't work for us. So, and that is a little painful, because I don't think as human beings we can say that it doesn't work. We all have that capacity to basically empathize and also understand what another person needs and make those adjustments, so long as we have that determination that we want to make that change. So this is what we advise, and this is what I think many companies, and I've heard even amount that Publicis Sapient does. In fact, I draw a lot of inspiration from Vieshaka and the journey that they've had at Publicis also. So I mean, I hope companies do all of this and they remain consistent. It's not like 2023 we have done some amount of work and then we are set for the next 3 years. This is something which you'll have to do constantly, year after year. Keep checking, getting feedback on where are we, like what are employees, are they feeling as included, or that sense of belonging as much as we want them to feel. Because if one is on policy level, on paper, and the other is on actually lived experiences of your employees.
Sure. So I completely hear you. We worked with Maya from Tweet Foundation to do something very interesting in interiors of Gujarat, in an industrial township where parents of employees doctors, teachers from that township. Everybody was brought in for this unconscious bias training, which had an aspect about gender sexuality, and which brought in even local community from the same town so that they could understand, and their cultural nuances were also plugged in there. And then after a week, when we did a larger event and a fair, the response was that almost 1,000 people ended up coming from a township, uh, which is an unheard of number for an organization of that size and for a steel plantation, the kind that we are talking, because it it compounded over time, and compound interest is one of the sweetest things to receive. And but while planning for it, it is a bit painful. And intersectionality, I look at it from that perspective. um, right now we are at the brink of the final phase of this session. So in case there are any audience questions, because we've been talking, we can steer the conversations to the direction, to some points that we might not have emphasized enough on, some things that you would like to know and we have not covered till now in DI, in corporate section, and anything of that sort, and you would like us to cover that, please let us know. Please put that up in chat, and we will pull it, and we will utilize this opportunity to address that. And till those questions come in, let's move ahead and get on to next thing with Vieshaka. Vieshaka, now we've spoken technical aspects, but is there one cherished memory from your DI journey, uh, not pertaining to your own company, but pertaining to something that you really aspire towards, something that really inspired you in a certain manner? Do we have any of that?
Of course. But I'll speak about both, right? So, and I'll try and be crisp. So, I think there were so many efforts which are successful programs from other companies that totally inspired, me, our thought process. I think, the network that you spoke about, Praful, that we all learn from even today, right? The sharing, and if an organization does a program and shares freely about it, about, everybody learns. I think we all also leaped ahead. We did not have to do the same. um we did not have to do the same journey of mistakes, faux pas, but we learned. But we stood on those programs. So there could be career attorney programs from other companies. There could be the whole, the parenting program that I spoke about that went on for years. And I learned about scale. I learned about topics as the topics would evolve and all of that. Um, but I also learned a lot about what what not to do or be careful for from stories that were not good stories. And I would like to, if there is one thing, some people can take back, it is about, please be okay to make mistakes. Because a lot of the bad experiences people shared with me, I had, right, doing this kind of work, actually was poured into the work we do at Publicis Sapient, because I was able to guide people not to make those mistakes. Be very, very careful not to, be very, very careful that those things are not repeated. Watchful of those experiences. So I think that's been a very big learning. I continue to go back and ask for feedback, especially on what's not going well. I think that's a very key question. But to tell you about what also inspires me is a story of a colleague who came in through different programs or decided to speak to us during our focus group discussion, or found the inspiration to say that, okay, I just want to tell you what's happening. And there are so many of them, right? Like, just today, I was sharing about some of the career returnee women, people that I refer to the organization. And sometimes, and all of these, three people, just over the last 2 weeks, I got such great news. where people who had not worked for 10 years, 6 years, and they were losing hope that they could get back, right? Like they were also losing their own confidence as a good worker. And I knew these three people from three different networks. One from my son's school network, one from my single parents network, another from my own office network. Just in the last 2 weeks, two of them have got confirmed from being contractual workers, which is a great boost to their confidence. The third person, who was also dealing with a lot of challenges to get back, is traveling from one of the smaller towns in Tamil Nadu to UK this week. And as I shared the story back to some of our DI council members, I was like, look at how the business would have benefited, because this was a true testament of not just somebody pushing their candidature inside, but how they've created value, and now we see it. And there are so many of these stories, all our interns who come in and more. One of our interns, we all did the gender neutral washroom at some point of time, thinking, this has to be there, right? So it's like one of your audit things that, when you audit your system, you're like, okay. And then you are, educating people about the importance of it. And then this is not just about a certain community, but anybody, right? But in one of our current trans internship project boot camp, I was asking them, okay, what was the best thing about today? And somebody said today, a trans man mentioned how the happiest day of their life was to go ahead and use a men's washroom. I'm so emotional even recollecting that moment. It was, it was sad, emotional, because why should a person have to have this experience? But the fact that when we were doing the gender neutral washroom, did we really think that the happiest moment of somebody's life would be not to use a gender neutral washroom, but to be, etc., in the right washroom they want to go? Right? So all of this is, it keeps me really, truly connected to this. And a lot of people at Publicis Sapient, I can assure you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vieshaka, for that. Just drawing our attention to the time that we have, and we have a couple of questions in the chat box. I'm reading one of them, which seems to be very important, and that is that, what metrics or indicators do you use to measure the effectiveness of D&I efforts? A tough one, but I'm sure you can kind of, throw some light before we go off air.
So, every organization has different ones. So I'll first like to bring that there can be global DIB benchmarks, there can be ISO 30415, there can be a lot more than what people usually do in India currently, the popular ones and the metrics that are there. A lot of them are also being formed, like American Indian Foundation just created Disability Inclusive Places to Work certification program, and a few of us came together and created that whole certification parameter, etc. So a lot of work is still in progress. DI overall as a spectrum is not mapped correctly in India. There are sections that are done. So there is something for great places to work, which is a generic one. There is something which is women specific. There is something which is LGBT specific. And there are fragments that are there. So first knowing that, and then knowing which one an organization chooses to use will be something. So I just wanted that mindfulness to be there before we get into the choices that people are making, and within the geographies and the portfolios that we have, that Vieshaka and Anupama can share from there then.
Yes, so we can't improve what we can't measure. And of course, there's a typical measure of diversity in terms of number, which is important and will continue to be important, because that is a way of seeing how many people are really truly finding their space. But there are these different auditor courses, etc. One of them being the ISO certification on DEI. And it tells you that if you have a benchmark today of where you are, and you've made a plan for the next, it's a very important. You just measure your own organization's journey. Are we doing what we did? The whole cycle of it, and that's a great way to make it. You also can participate in different benchmarks and look at comparing yourself, so that you're not losing sight of what is possible, and learn from best practices. So that's what I would add.
Yeah. I think I've also seen companies like one is putting their targets for various diversity and also certain actions on a yearly basis that they would like to take and then keep measuring and seeing that where have we reached with respect to that. Some companies have also included certain parts in their employee engagement surveys that are being done, maybe like with Tuit or any of these kind of organizations. So some inclusion related indicators. So
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those insights. I think those were absolutely great. I'll now kind of hand it over to Praful to just kind of sum this whole thing up, and before we kind of play the outro video. Praful, a minute of your time.
Thank you. So DI, as diverse, as wide, as expansive, the whole subject is, our point of views were that varied. So there is no one way of doing inclusion. There are multiple ways. We had some examples that were shared by the team here, which ranged right from using the correct pronouns to how to measure the progress. There is a whole spectrum of things that can be done, and just being mindful that we are including the person in front of us in the dialogue that we are currently having. That, I guess, is a measure always. Thank you.
Sure, that's food for thought. Praful, thank you so much once again for bringing this wonderful panel and sharing your thoughts with us. Thanks, Vieshaka, for sharing what Publicis Sapient is doing and your own personal journey. And Anupama, thanks to you as well. As usual, I think a lot of insight, a lot of inspiration from what you said. Thank you, the whole panel. Thank you very much from Changemakers 20 and G20. Thank you.